Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Magruder, and I'm the Executive Director of Community Hero Action Group. Welcome to our next session, which is Crazy Amazing Human Milk, Breastfeeding's Impact on the Lifelong Health of Mother and Child. This session is being presented by Denise O'Connor, and she is the Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Mothers Milk Bank. The objective of today's session is to identify human milk's role as a driver of lifelong health, raise awareness about the importance of human milk, get people thinking about how they can support, facilitate, and advocate for parents to have what they need to meet their feeding goals, and open a dialogue about human milk. But before we get started, I want to introduce a very special guest that we have on today's session. And this is artist Emma Wimberly from the Ink Factory. And what she'll be doing is creating visual notes, which means that she'll be synthesizing the words from the presentation into images and text to visually represent the key concepts of our conversation. Visual notes help with boosting understanding, learning, and also information retention. So if you are interested in receiving a copy of Emma's masterpiece at the end of this session, be sure to complete the survey that you'll receive post-conference and just check off that you would like to receive a copy, and we will be sure to provide that to you. So without further ado, I will go ahead and bring on Denise's presentation, and I'm sure that you will enjoy it and find it very, very interesting and full of resources, especially to you women out there who are currently breastfeeding or thinking about it, or if you have friends or family members. All right, thanks. Enjoy the presentation.
Donor milk, get folks welcome.
That's the most common comment that I have from people in the community, that they just didn't know that such a thing existed. There are actually about 30 milk banks, nonprofit milk banks across North America. So we serve the Mid-Atlantic states. We're based in Pittsburgh, but we really are the predominant supplier of bank donor milk to the state of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. We also serve parts of New Jersey, Maryland, and Delaware. Now, we're licensed in Pennsylvania, in Maryland, and New York. We're not licensed in those other states that I mentioned because those states simply don't regulate milk banks at this time. We are accredited by the Human Milk Banking Association of North America, that they're referred to as HBANA, and that is a very important piece of information because HBANA is really the expert on safe and ethical milk banking practices, and their guidelines have been the gold standard in milk banking for over 4 decades now. We opened here as a HBANA accredited milk bank in 2016 to fulfill the growing need for a reliable and ample supply of safe and ethically sourced donor milk in our region. That is because donor milk has really become the standard of care for ill babies being cared for in the NICU. Before we opened, only a third of the level 3 and level 4 NICUs, those are the units that take care of the sickest babies. Only a third of them in Pennsylvania were using donor milk, but very quickly after we opened, we got that up to 100%. So all NICUs that care for very, very ill babies in Pennsylvania and West Virginia now use donor milk for their most at-risk infants. And then another thing you need to know about us, and you'll see that is very apparent when you see how excited I am about the information I'm going to present to you, that as an organization, we believe that human bodies are beautifully complex and that the milk that they make to feed and develop babies is absolutely amazing. So one of the first things I wanted to start off with are showing some pictures of breastfeeding parents. And so this is something that you may not have seen before or see very much of, but it is something that we need to normalize. Caring for an infant means feeding a baby as well. And so, there's nothing more beautiful than a parent, taking care of the needs of their child. Our brilliant bodies nourishing our babies are absolutely normal and beautiful. So just gonna let that sit here for a minute so we can enjoy all those beautiful images before we move on. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the benefits of human milk for babies, for parents, and then for society as a whole. Now, I know that I'm throwing a lot of information at you on this slide, and the rest of them are not like this, I promise, but there are so many benefits to human milk for infants. And many people will be surprised to know that those benefits are not just in infancy. They really do extend to childhood and beyond. Really, a lifetime of benefits are enjoyed by the infant who receives human milk. Human milk is species specific and tailored perfectly for the needs of a developing child. So in infancy, we know that babies that receive human milk, they have stronger immune systems. Breastfed babies have less GI issues such as diarrhea and reflux. They have fewer colds and other respiratory illnesses. They have fewer infections like ear infections, and they have a much lower rate of sudden infant death syndrome. And now moving on to childhood, children are still reaping the benefits of being breastfed, even though they've been weaned. So we know that children that were breastfed have lower rates of allergies, including eczema and asthma. They're less likely to develop type 1 or type 2 diabetes. They tend to be leaner and have less rates of obesity. They have less likelihood of childhood cancers, including leukemia and lymphoma. They'll have less cavities than their formula-fed counterparts and less risk of Crohn's disease and colitis. And so, those benefits keep on coming. And even as an adult, a breastfed infant will still be changed forever and enjoying the benefits of having been breastfed in those early months. The adult that was breastfed is going to have a lower risk of some autoimmune diseases, such as rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. They are going to have a much lower risk of heart disease. And women that were breastfed have lower rates of both pre and postmenopausal breast cancer. And breastfed adults, those adults that were breastfed in childhood, have a less of a risk of developing multiple sclerosis. Now, there's also a lot in it for parents as well. The act of lactating, whether that's breastfeeding a child at the breast or expressing milk, pumping milk, the act of lactating changes metabolism, changes the risk profile of that parent forever. We know that lactating parents have lower rates of hypertension, so high blood pressure, heart disease, and strokes. We know that they have a decreased risk of ovarian and breast cancer, lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And this is especially important for those parents that had gestational diabetes during pregnancy, because those parents are at a much higher risk of later developing type 2 diabetes. And by breastfeeding, they can lessen that increased risk. Breastfeeding mothers have lower rates of rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, and have less osteoporosis as they age. Now, everything that I've described here, there have been multiple studies replicating these effects. So we know that this is really evidence-based. And a lot of these studies also show that the benefits are dose dependent, meaning that the longer that a mother breastfeeds, the more, the greater benefit that she has as far as decreasing the risk of all of these things. So the benefits are not just for, baby and mom, really as a society as a whole. There's something in it for everyone. We should all want little humans to have access to human milk. First of all, it saves lives. And that is absolutely a true statement. And everybody, of course, wants happy, healthy babies. By optimizing health outcomes, we're reducing healthcare costs. It's actually tied to a more productive workforce, because we know that parents who are working parents, if their babies aren't sick, they're not going to miss work. So that's in it. That's something that's in it for everyone. And it's better for the environment. There is a lot of environmental impact that goes into the production of formula. So now I just want to tell you a little bit of some fun facts about human milk, things that I think are cool that you may never have heard of. My goodness, we could do a talk just on fun facts of human milk, but I'm just going to give you some highlights. First of all, human milk is always changing. It's different from mother to mother. It's different within one mother through her time of lactation. The very early milk right after birth, called colostrum, is this thick yellow substance. It's full of immunological factors and all sorts of things that help with the development of that baby. Then her milk changes as it goes on to mature milk, and then keeps on changing over days and weeks and months as we get towards weaning. It even changes from day to night. So very cool. It is a dynamic substance. It's not like a food that you eat or formula where it's just providing, nutrients, vitamins, minerals, calories, protein. It's more than that. It's constantly evolving and is meeting the specific needs of that developing baby. So that's so cool. About 1/3 of milk is made up of human milk oligosaccharides, HMOs. It's really interesting because these are sugars, but they are not able to be digested by babies. So what's their purpose? They're actually the food for the good gut bacteria. So you may have heard about the importance of the microbiome. The microbiome is all of the organisms that live in our gut. It is really important for us to have the right mix of organisms, to have the good bacteria, beneficial bacteria, to be the dominant bacteria in the gut. And this is a driver of all sorts of has all sorts of health implications. We now know that certain diseases are tied with differences to the microbiome. We know that it's a big factor in health for an entire lifetime. And the microbiome really starts with breastfeeding. The mother does transfer bacteria to the baby, and then the HMOs that are in the milk, they have this food that is feeding the proper types, the right types, the good types of beneficial bacteria. It is such an exquisite system. So I mentioned a little bit about how human milk is changing, and it's changing as far as like immunological factors, growth factors, the protein, the calories, the fat, all of that. But it also changes in flavor according to the mother's diet. So it is a way that the baby's introduced to the family's diet. And so, sometimes you see, little ones who have a taste, because of their the cuisine of their family. Some cultures have, that very spicy foods or heavily flavored foods. And those little ones enjoy the taste of that food. And it's because whispers of those tastes of that cuisine have been eaten by that baby for months, preparing that baby for eating solid foods and eventually weaning to an all food diet. And then the coolest thing I think about human milk is the constant communication between the mother's breast, her baby, the environment, and the immune systems of both the mother and the baby. So the mom, she's exposed to the same environment that the baby is. When she's exposed to pathogens, bacteria and viruses, she develops antibodies and immunological factors to them, and those are expressed in her milk, which protects her baby. Babies are born with extremely immature immune systems. And so, this is how their immune systems are informed. And then alternatively, the pathogens that the baby is exposed to, there's actually a whole really brilliant system where the bacteria the baby's exposed to is communicated to the breast, and then the mother makes immunological factors that are specific to those pathogens. And again, those are in her milk and they protect her baby. So just so cool. So now that I've told you all these interesting things about human milk, it's not going to surprise you at all that human milk can be medicine for sick babies. And that's where we come in. So human milk really is evidence-based medicine for preterm babies and for sick babies that don't have access to their own mother's milk. Now, our typical recipient is really just like this little guy, Daniel. Daniel was born in one of our local hospitals here in Pittsburgh, and we had the privilege of having his family and several families in that specific NICU agreed to having a photo session for us so that we could take some pictures for our early marketing materials and our applications for grants and things like that. Daniel's story was particularly interesting and emotional because he had just been extubated. And so this is the first time that this mom was able to really caress and hold her baby like this way. So he was born at 24 weeks old. A normal gestation, normal pregnancy is 40 weeks. So 24 weeks, you can imagine how tiny he was and immature he was. These really are the typical babies that would receive donor milk. So this happened before we opened. So unfortunately in this NICU, there was not donor milk yet because we didn't exist. So I'm hoping that he had access to mom's own milk. So a little bit more about why donor milk is evidence-based. So in the NICU, up to 70% of moms who have a baby that's being cared for with, illnesses that require them to be in the NICU are unable to meet all their baby's needs, at least initially. Most of these moms, the vast majority of them, go on to make enough for their babies. And so we're really filling in the gaps and keeping those babies safe until mom's supply is adequate. We know that for these babies that need a little bit of supplementation while mom's working on her supply, and there are a few of them that just need donor milk throughout the hospital stay because their mother's unable to breastfeed for some reason at all. We know that these infants can have a dramatic reduction in serious complications. There are a lot of different complications that these babies are prone to, and some of them can cause death or result in lifelong disability. The types of disability I'm talking about is, life-changing, changes the trajectory of that child's life, changes that family. We can provide very powerful protection against some of these infections, some of the GI complications, especially a condition called necrotizing enterocolitis, which is an inflammation of the gut that happens to up to 10% of preterm babies, and it can be absolutely devastating. We know that babies that receive donor milk instead of formula for medically necessary supplementation have a decreased length of stay in the neonatal intensive care unit. We know that units that have donor milk available, they have a much higher rate of exclusive maternal breastfeeding at discharge. And that really is the ultimate goal, because as I had mentioned, a mother makes milk that is completely tailored to her baby's needs at that time. So nothing compares to mother's own milk. And that really is the end goal for her and her baby to optimize their health outcomes. And really, donor milk is the standard of care in the United States for at-risk infants who don't have access to their own mama's milk. Now, you're probably wondering, how do we make this safe? Milk from a donor, and make it safe for these babies that are so incredibly ill. So first of all, the safety features of the milk bank start off with donor screening. Everything we do, from donor screening to how we process the milk, how we test, and how we distribute, we very strictly follow the guidelines of our accrediting body, HABANA, and all applicable state regulations. So our donors are essentially just healthy, lactating people who make more milk than their own babies need. Just like a blood bank, our donors are uncompensated volunteers. In fact, we are prohibited from having any compensation for our donors by our accrediting body because of the potential to introduce safety and ethical concerns. So the donors go through a 4-part screening process. And of course, we pay for all the costs of that process and shipping the milk if necessary. We start off with a phone interview with one of our milk bank screeners. It takes about 15 or 20 minutes. It's an opportunity for us to get to know the donor, to talk a little bit about what we want them to do as far as pumping and cleaning their pumps, and they can ask questions. We also talk about some medical history, diet, medication and supplement use, those types of things. So if all goes well with that, then we send an application packet to the donors, and we do a little deeper dive into medical history and all that other kind of stuff. And then we send them out for blood screening. We're looking for similar things to the blood bank. So basically bloodborne pathogens that could potentially pass through milk. And then once those donors are approved, they've completed that entire screening process, they can either drop their milk off to the milk bank if they live locally here in Pittsburgh, or if they live outside of Pittsburgh, we have a couple great options. One is we send a shipping cooler to their home with instructions on how to pack it. It's super simple. They call a number, and then UPS or FedEx comes and picks it up at their door, and then it arrives by magic, like magic, all safe and frozen the next day here to the milk bank. Most of our donors are outside of the Pittsburgh area, obviously, because we have a very large geographic region. And so really Pittsburgh is just a small part of what we do. We also have some drop-off sites, some depots that are scattered across the state as well. So the safety process to make milk safe for these little ones starts with the donor screening, but then we also do things to the milk itself. So in our lab, at the end of each day, we go into our raw milk freezers, figure out what milk that we are going to be thawing for the next day. We then transfer that milk to refrigerators where the milk thaws overnight. And then the next morning, our lab staff mixes and bottles that milk. We actually pool the milk of 5 to 10 donors together. And what that does is evens out nutritional variations between those moms and also increases the immunological profile of that milk, because we are getting immunological factors from all the things that all those mamas are being exposed to. So not perfect like mom's own milk would have been, but it does increase the amount of good bioactive factors by pooling that milk. Once it's bottled, we take that milk and we do a low temperature pasteurization on it. So we are taking it up to about 145 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. That low temperature inactivates pathogens like bacteria and viruses. So another layer of safety, because we're screening those moms. They're going for blood work to look at bloodborne pathogens, and then we're pasteurizing. So multiple layers of safety to make sure that milk is safe for the sickest babies that we serve. Now, what's important about doing a low temperature pasteurization is that also keeps as much of the bioactivity as possible. So those human milk oligosaccharides that I talked about that are the food for the good gut bacteria, those are mainly intact with this process. And immunological factors that are really important to protect those babies are also retained mostly by this type of pasteurization. And then the milk also goes through a number of tests. After pasteurization, it goes through bacterial culturing to make sure that it's safe. We also nutritionally analyze the milk to be able to look at the fat, the calories, the protein, and the carbohydrates. And that information enables the nutritionists and the neonatologists and the staff in the NICUs to be able to come up with the best custom nutrition plans for each baby's specific needs. We also drug test the milk for a panel of common drugs of abuse. Now, why is donor milk awareness important? Well, it's important because my guess is that the majority of people that are listening here today had no clue we existed. And we need families, recipient families, to know that donor milk is evidence-based medicine and that it's safe. We really don't want a family who's the medical team of their baby has come to them and has suggested donor milk, and they've never heard of us before, and it's a completely novel concept. So we'd love it if they already knew that we existed. We want moms with overflowing freezers to know to call us. So many times, I'll hear from moms, oh my gosh, I had a whole freezer full of milk and I didn't know what to do with it. My baby couldn't use it and I had to pour it down the drain. So that milk could have literally been life-saving. And so we want families to know we exist. And we are very transparent. You'll see if you look on our social media, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, we're everywhere. And also our site too has a ton of information on it. We feel it's really important as a milk bank to be extraordinarily transparent with what we do, because the donors should know exactly what's being done with their milk. So now I'm going to touch a little bit upon disparities, because we know now how wonderful donor milk is and how wonderful human milk is. Yet, unfortunately, there is a lot of babies that are not able to have access to mom's own milk or to donor milk. And we know that our non-white infants have less access to human milk in general, both maternal milk and donor milk. There is a lot of work that we need to do as a society to enable parents to have what they need to meet their feeding goals, their individual feeding goals. Everything from the fact that we have terrible maternity leave, virtually non-existent maternity leave. We need more lactation support. We need a supportive culture. We need so much. This could be a multiple hour talk in and of itself. Is just, the gaps that there are in human milk equity, access issues, everything. So I'm just acknowledging it here and just letting you know that it exists. And ideally what we'd love to do is we'd love to all work together to create that culture that understands the importance of human milk and values it. And there are ways that we can all participate in this. We can all help create that environment where parents are supported and they are given what they need to be successful at their feeding goals, which hopefully includes providing human milk. So, just on a personal level in your own lives, you can support and encourage breastfeeding. Celebrate the feeding choices of your loved ones, of your family and your friends. You can facilitate success by recognizing the time and energy that breastfeeding takes. And if you have somebody who's a new parent in your life who is breastfeeding their child, the ways that you can help best are the ways that allow that parent to focus on feeding and rest. Encourage the loved ones in your life if they're having problems and challenges. The early weeks of breastfeeding are hard. Mom and baby are learning, right? It's time consuming. Mom's recovering from birth. A lot is going on. So it really is a tender time. It's a time where parents need a lot of support. Encourage those parents to seek help. There's a lot of help available, and I'm going to discuss where they can find that in a bit if they're experiencing issues. And then this picture. So this is something that should be a totally normal occurrence. We need to recognize that nursing in public is a normal part of caring for an infant. Yes, when you're in a restaurant, why wouldn't a mother, take care of her baby, feed her baby while she's feeding herself, right? That should be normal. In the workplace, there's a lot of work that can be done as well. We want to enable employees to provide human milk for their babies. So recognize the need of lactating co-workers, their need to have pumping breaks. That's something that a lactating parent absolutely has to have. Our bodies it's a constant feedback system. It is constantly our body is constantly making the milk that is needed for the baby, but it also, is listening to the cues. And so if a mother goes without pumping for, 5-6 hours and has not emptied her breast, that signals the body to stop making milk because it's telling her body that milk is not needed. So in order for her supply to be up, she needs to be emptying that breast frequently. So, every 2, 3, 4 hours at the most, she needs to have some time to pump. Familiarize yourself with break time provisions and other considerations regarding breastfeeding in the workplace. There's a lot of great info about this on health.pa.gov. And if you are an employer, as an employer, provide a comfortable private space for employees to pump and have a written policy regarding lactation in the workplace. Now, a lot of the provisions that you will see on the government sites, they really apply to employers that have 50 employees or more. But I challenge all employers, no matter how many employees you have, to provide that comfortable space and to provide those breaks. It is so incredibly important. And employees seek out these types of benefits. These are the things that they want. Young families want these types of amenities when they're looking for an employer. And, also if you are a lactating parent, know your rights. Look at that government website, know what provisions your employer should be making for you. And we can all advocate for better policies. We can get vocal in school, workplace, personally. There's so many opportunities, right? And even contacting your legislators. When you see that there are bills out there that'll help families by allowing better family leave, more support for young families, increasing access to lactation help, donor milk, and other things that families need, take the 5 minutes to contact your legislator and ask them to support those important pieces of legislation. Here at the Milk Bank, we're actually very active advocates. One of the things we're working on right now is advocating for a bill that's in the House. It's House Bill 2017, which is an insurance mandate for donor milk coverage. So coverage is really important on the hospital side of things. The hospitals pay for our milk processing fees. The milk itself, of course, is free because of the fact that it is donated. But as you see, there was a lot of things that we have to do to make that milk safe for our fragile populations we serve. And so just like a blood bank, we need to have, there's fees associated with that, with the screening, with the processing, with the testing. And so, that's the hospitals for the inpatients pay those fees. But that means that, some hospitals that have more resources have very wide open criteria for donor milk use, and then others that have less resources end up having very strict, very narrow criteria for donor milk use. So, and then on the outpatient side of things, it's really important for sick babies who are being cared for at home to be able to have access, and insurance coverage is absolutely essential to that. So about 75% of what we do is in the hospital. The other 25% are outpatients. Our outpatients tend to be extraordinarily complex. That's the big common thing among them, is that oftentimes these are babies that have cardiac issues, GI surgeries, severe allergies, things like that, and they may rely on donor milk to thrive. So check that bill out and call your legislators if that's something that you think should be supported. Now I want to tell you a little bit about resources. There's so many resources for lactating parents. And so one of the most comprehensive and best guides I've ever seen is the one actually put out by our own state. So the Pennsylvania Breastfeeding Referral Guide is fantastic. It's a great resource for anyone who works with young families or for any parent. You can find it right at health.pa.gov. And it breaks down all the resources that are available for families by county. It's an over 60-page document. It's awesome and very comprehensive. So I definitely encourage folks to check that out. And so that's all I have for you. And I hope that I've got you thinking. I hope that I've gotten you excited about human milk, about its role in optimizing health for everyone. And I hope it, makes you, feel, there's that empowered to be able to provide what is needed as far as support and advocacy for those around you, that it's normalized human milk a little bit for you. And that's a great lead into our next part, which we're going to open everything up for questions. And hopefully we will get a good dialogue about human milk going. So if you would like to learn more about our organization specifically, I invite you to take a look at our website, midatlanticmilkbank.org. You can always contact us at info@midatlanticmilkbank.org if you have a question, and follow us on social media. We try to do some fun things mixed in with some serious education, so I hope you enjoy that as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about human milk.